He was a youth of some 20 summers, of a vivacious temperament, quick and bold. The older members judged him to be too young and too flighty. They even accused him of having gone up the pulpit stairs 2 steps at a time on one occasion when he was hurried, a grave offence for which the condemnation could hardly be too severe. He was only a young man, and came from an academy, and this alone was enough to make the sounder and older members afraid of him. He preached for a lengthened time on probation, and finally some 40 persons withdrew because they could not agree with the enthusiastic vote by which the majority of the people elected him. John Rippon modestly expressed his wonder that even more had not been dissatisfied, and his surprise that so large a number were agreed to call him to the pastorate. In the spirit of forbearance and brotherly love, he proposed that as these friends were succeeding for conscience' sake, and intending to form themselves into another church, they should be lovingly dismissed with prayer and Godspeed, and that, as a token of fraternal affection, they should be assisted to build a meeting house for their own convenience, and the sum of £300 should be voted to them when their church was formed and their meeting house erected. The promise was redeemed, and Mr. Rippon took part in the ordination service of the first minister. This was well done. Such a course was sure to secure the blessing of God. The church in Dean Street thus became another offshoot from the parent stem, and with varying conditions it remains to this day as the church in Trinity Street, Borough. It is somewhat remarkable, as illustrating the perversity of human judgment, that the seceding friends who objected to Rippon's youth elected for their pastor Mr. William Button, who was younger still, being only 19 years of age. His father, however, was a deacon under Dr. Gill, and therefore no doubt the worthy youth was regarded with all the more tenderness. Nor did he disappoint the hopes of his friends, for he laboured on for more than 40 years with the utmost acceptance. The friends who remained with young John Rippon had no reason to regret their choice. The tide of prosperity set in and continued for half a century, and the church again came to the front in denominational affairs. The chapel in Carter Lane was enlarged, and various agencies and societies set in motion. There was, in fact, a real revival of religion in the church, though it was of that quiet style which became a Baptist church of the straighter sort. Rippon was rather clever than profound. His talents were far inferior to those of Gill, but he had more tact, and so turned his gifts to the greatest possible account. He said many smart and witty things, and his preaching was always lively, affectionate, and impressive. He was popular in the best sense of the term, beloved at home, respected abroad, and useful everywhere. Many souls were won to Jesus by his teaching, and out of these a remarkable number became themselves ministers of the gospel. The church book abounds with records of brethren preaching before the church, as the custom was in those days. In his later years, Dr. Rippon was evidently in very comfortable circumstances, for we have often heard mention of his carriage and pair, or rather glass coach and 2 horses. His congregation was one of the wealthiest within the pale of nonconformity, and always ready to aid the various societies which sprang up. especially the Baptist Foreign Mission and a certain Baptist Itinerant Society, which I suppose to have represented the Baptist Home Mission. The pastor occupied no mean position in the church, but ruled with dignity and discretion, perhaps ruled a little too much. "How is it, Doctor, that your church is always so peaceful?" said a much-tried brother minister. "Well, friend," said Ripon, "you see, we don't call a church meeting to consult about buying a new broom every time we want one, and we don't entreat every noisy member to make a speech about the price of soap the floors are scrubbed with. In many of our smaller churches, a want of common sense is very manifest in the management, and trouble is invited by the foolish methods of procedure. Dr. Rippon once said that he had some of the best people in His Majesty's dominions in his church, and he used to add with a nod, and some of the worst. Some of the latter class seem to have got into office at one time, for they were evidently a hindrance rather than a help to the good man, though from his independent mode of doing things, the hindrance did not much affect him. As well as I can remember it, the story of his founding the almshouses and schools in 1803 runs as follows. The doctor urges upon the deacons the necessity of such institutions. They do not see the urgency thereof. He pleads again, but like the deaf adder, they are not to be charmed. Charm he never so wisely. The expense will be enormous, and the money cannot be raised. This was the unceasing croak of the prudent officers. At length, the pastor says, "The money can be raised, and shall be. Why, if I don't go out next Monday and collect £500 before the evening meeting, I'll drop the proposal. But while I am sure that people will take up the matter heartily, I will not be held back by you." Disputes in this case were urged in very plain language, but with no degree of bitterness, for the parties knew each other and had too much mutual respect to make their relationships in the church depend upon a point of difference. All were agreed to put the doctor to the test, and challenged him to produce the £500 next Monday, or cease to importune them about almshouses. The worthy slow coaches were up to time on the appointed evening, and the doctor soon arrived. "Well, brethren," said he, "I have succeeded in collecting £300. That is most encouraging, is it not?" "But," said 2 or 3 of them, at once in a hurry, "you said you would get £500 or drop the matter, and we mean to keep you to your word." "By all means," said he, "and I mean to keep my word too, for there is £800 which the friends gave me almost without asking, and the rest is nearly all promised." The prudent officials were taken aback, but recovering themselves, they expressed their great pleasure, and would be ready to meet the pastor at any time, to arrange for the expending of the funds. "No, no, my brethren," said the doctor, "I shall not need your services. You have opposed me all along, and now I have done the work without you. You want to have your say in it to hinder me still. But neither you nor any other deacon shall plague a minister about this business. So, brethren, you can attend to something else." Accordingly, the old trust deed of the almshouses had a clause to the effect that the pastor should elect the pensioners, no deacon interfering.